Hello, my friends. Look around you for a moment. Your phone tells you the time, your computer shows the time. Even your microwave has a clock. But thousands of years ago, humans had none of these things. No watches, no clocks, no alarms. So how did people know when to wake up, work, eat, or sleep? The answer is simple and beautiful. They looked at the sky. Long before cities existed, early humans watched the sun very carefully. They noticed something important. Every day, the sun followed the same path across the sky. It rose in the east, it climbed higher and higher, then slowly moved west and disappeared. This pattern never changed. People soon realized something powerful. The sun itself could tell time. When the sun was low in the morning, it was early. When the sun stood high above their heads, it was the middle of the day. When shadows became long again, evening was coming. Shadows were the first real clock hands. Ancient people noticed that objects on the ground, trees, rocks, sticks, cast shadows that moved as the sun moved. The shadow slowly traveled across the ground. If you placed a stick in the dirt, the shadow would slowly turn like a giant arrow. This discovery changed everything. Some of the earliest civilizations, like those in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China, began using special sticks called gnomons. These sticks stood upright and their shadows moved across marked ground. This simple tool became the first sundial. By watching the shadow move across marks in the dirt or stone, people could roughly tell the time of day: morning, midday, afternoon. It was not perfect, but it was a start. Farmers used the sun to know when to work the fields. Travelers used the sun to judge how much daylight remained. Priests used it to decide when ceremonies should begin. But there was one big problem. What happens when the sun disappears? Clouds cover the sky, night falls, rainstorms come, and suddenly the clock stops. Humans needed a way to measure time even when the sun was gone. So they began searching for a new idea. And their next invention was something very surprising. They used water. Imagine trying to measure time using water. At first, it sounds strange. But ancient humans were incredibly creative. They noticed something interesting when water poured from a container. It flowed slowly and steadily, drop by drop. If water could flow at a steady speed, maybe it could measure time. This idea led to one of the oldest timekeeping machines in human history, the water clock. Water clocks appeared over 4,000 years ago in civilizations like ancient Egypt, Babylon, India, and China. The basic design was simple. A stone or clay bowl had a tiny hole in the bottom. When filled with water, the liquid slowly dripped out through the hole. As the water level dropped, marks on the inside of the bowl showed how much time had passed. It worked like a slow, invisible hourglass. Instead of sand falling down, water slowly drained away. Some water clocks worked the opposite way. Instead of water draining out, water slowly filled the container. When the water reached a certain mark, a certain amount of time had passed. These clocks were called clepsydras, which means water thief in Greek, because the water slowly stole itself away. Water clocks became very important. Courts in ancient Greece used them to measure how long someone could speak during a trial. When the water ran out, the speaker had to stop talking. In ancient China, engineers built incredibly complex water clocks with gears, wheels, and floating devices that moved as water levels changed. Some of these clocks even rang bells to signal certain times of the day. But water clocks had problems too. In cold weather, the water could freeze. In hot weather, water could evaporate. Even small changes in temperature could change the speed of the water flow. So while water clocks were better than sundials at night, they still were not perfect. Human civilization was growing fast. Cities were becoming larger, trade was expanding, life was becoming more organized. People needed a better way to measure time, a clock that could work day and night in every season. That invention would come many centuries later, and it would be built from metal, gears, and moving wheels. For thousands of years, time flowed like water or sunlight. But around the 13th century, something revolutionary happened in Europe. Humans invented the mechanical clock. This was one of the most important inventions in history. Instead of water or shadows, these clocks used gears and weights to measure time. The first mechanical clocks appeared in churches and city towers. They were huge machines made from iron gears, wooden frames, and heavy hanging weights. Here is how they worked. A large weight hung from a rope. Gravity slowly pulled the weight downward. As the weight fell, it turned gears inside the clock. But if the gears spun freely, the clock would run too fast. So inventors created a special device called an escapement. This clever mechanism allowed the gears to move forward one tiny step at a time. Tick, pause, tick, pause. This steady rhythm controlled the movement of the clock. For the first time in history, humans had a machine that could measure time automatically. No sun needed, no water needed, just gears and gravity. These early clocks were not very accurate. They could lose or gain hours over a few days, but they were still amazing. Soon, tall clock towers appeared in many European cities. Huge bells rang every hour. People in towns and villages began organizing their lives around these sounds. Work started when the bell rang. Markets opened when the bell rang. Church services began when the bell rang. For the first time, entire cities followed the same clock. But there was still one problem. These clocks were enormous. You could not carry them. People still had no personal way to tell time. Until one small invention changed everything. During the 1500s, clockmakers began building something incredible: portable clocks. The invention of a small metal spring, called a mainspring, made this possible. Instead of using heavy hanging weights, a tightly wound spring stored energy. As the spring slowly unwound, it turned the gears of the clock. This allowed clocks to become much smaller. Soon, people created pocket watches. These early watches were round metal cases that could fit inside a pocket. Rich merchants, kings, and nobles began carrying them everywhere. For the first time, time became personal. A person no longer had to listen for a city bell. They could simply pull a watch from their pocket and look at the small moving hands. But early watches were not very accurate. They could lose hours every day. In the 1600s, a Dutch scientist named Christian Huygens invented a new device called the pendulum clock. A pendulum is a swinging weight. Left, right, left, right. The steady swing kept time far more accurately than earlier clocks. Pendulum clocks quickly became the most precise timekeepers in the world. Soon, homes, schools, and offices had tall standing clocks. You may know them today as grandfather clocks. Their long wooden bodies held the swinging pendulum inside. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound became the heartbeat of many homes. But humans still wanted something even smaller, something they could wear on their bodies. And that invention would soon arrive. For many centuries, watches stayed in pockets. But in the late 1800s and early 1900s, something changed. People began wearing watches on their wrists. At first, wristwatches were considered unusual. Many men believed pocket watches looked more serious and elegant. But soldiers soon discovered something important. During wars, pulling a watch from your pocket was slow and difficult. Looking at your wrist was much faster. During the World War I, soldiers began using wristwatches regularly. After the war ended, wristwatches quickly became popular all around the world. Watchmakers improved their designs. They added stronger springs, more precise gears, better protection from dust and water. By the mid-1900s, millions of people owned watches. But another revolution was coming. Instead of gears and springs, scientists discovered a way to measure time using electricity. In 1969, the company Seiko introduced one of the first quartz watches. Inside these watches was a tiny crystal. When electricity passed through the crystal, it vibrated extremely fast, thousands of times per second. These vibrations were incredibly steady. By counting them, the watch could measure time with amazing accuracy. Quartz watches were cheaper, more reliable, and more accurate than mechanical watches. Soon, they spread across the entire world. But humans did not stop there, because the story of timekeeping was about to enter the digital age. Today, time surrounds us everywhere. Your phone shows the time. Your computer shows the time. Your car shows the time. And on many wrists, people now wear something even more advanced than a watch, a smartwatch. Companies like Apple, Samsung, and Garmin have turned watches into tiny computers. These devices can track heartbeats, send messages, measure steps, and connect to the internet. But the most accurate clocks on Earth are something far more powerful. They are called atomic clocks. Instead of gears, springs, or crystals, these clocks measure time using the natural vibrations of atoms. Atomic clocks are so accurate that they would lose less than 1 second in millions of years. They help control GPS satellites, internet networks, and global communication. Every modern clock in the world is quietly connected to these powerful timekeepers. And yet, the entire journey began with something very simple: a stick in the ground, a shadow moving slowly across the earth. From sunlight to dripping water to ticking gears to vibrating crystals to the movement of atoms, the story of timekeeping is really the story of human curiosity. Humans looked at the sky and asked a question: how can we measure the passing of the day? Thousands of years later, we are still answering that question. And every time you check the time on your phone or watch, you are using the result of one of the longest inventions in human history, a journey that began with the sun.